All right. Whenever
Cool.
you're ready.
Hey guys, this is Craig from Bass Lessons Melbourne, and for today's player profile, I am joined by Mr. Scott Ambush. How are you, Scott?
I'm good, Craig. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, pretty good. You have the privilege, I think, of being my first ever video Skype distance
How cool
interview.
is this? This is actually my first. We're both virgins at this. This is my first video I've given.
All right,
Video
well,
interview I've given.
we'll be
It
gentle
was,
with
it was
each
a
other.
little bit of a. It was interesting setting it up today. I thought, about an hour before I'll start setting it up, and then I thought better of it, and there was, it was like hours and hours before working out the bugs and everything, getting some light because it's just 8:05 p.m. here, so the light's just starting to go down,
Yeah,
and it was beautiful natural sunlight in here earlier, and so
yeah,
I
there
had to
you
get the
go.
light in together. You'd be in the dark.
Yeah, because normally, I do these things face to face, and one of the first questions that you usually get into is, so what are you doing in Melbourne?
If only I could answer that question, man.
I know. So you were
I was
meant to
really
be here
bummed that didn't happen.
last month, I think, with Spyro Gyra, yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously,
Yeah,
due to the global coronavirus pandemic, all of that's been put on hold for the foreseeable future, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're I call it the rolling back blackout, As we go forward in time, the dates start to cancel and we go forward and we cancel dates, and so right now everything up till August is canceled.
Right.
And we'll see what happens. I mean, they're starting to open up the country here, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
I don't think it's such a good idea the way they're doing it.
Yeah, I think
Because
it
a lot of the place.
depends on
I
how...
was just gonna say it. Go ahead.
I think it depends on how responsible people are, afterwards, whether they've been scared
Yeah.
enough or...
Yeah, well, here people are. It's about half and half. There's people who are very responsible, and there's a whole group of people who are just railing against the idea of being restricted from doing anything, And I just saw on the news that there's a new, I forget what city it was, some city in Minnesota where there's a big meat packing plant. The number of cases went up 450% recently in
That's...
the last, days.
It's really
weeks.
interesting because there was a kind of spike here a few days ago at a meat plant as well, not far from me. So
Right.
something to do with meat.
Well, it's all those people. I mean, the plants here are one plant had 1,000 cases. I don't know what
Jeez,
percentage of
yeah.
the workforce that was, but 1,000 cases in one plant. So
Wow.
there's a
And
lot of people in there
Where are
processing
you?
meat.
Where are you based?
I'm about 40 miles from D.C.
Okay.
40 miles from D.C., 40 miles from Baltimore. It's kind of an equilateral triangle. So I'm on the east coast of the U.S.
Yep. Has that always been home area for you?
Yeah. I was born and raised in this area. I lived always in the general vicinity, never farther than about 50 miles from where I grew up.
Okay, cool. And so what? How old were you, and what was the impetus for getting into the bass?
I was 12 when I started, and
So just a few years ago.
Yeah, just a few years ago, yeah. You notice how I skirted that question. Yeah, I was 12 when I started, and I wanted to join a band, And there was a band that existed, but my buddies were starting a band, and they were brothers. They both played guitar, and I wanted to play drums, but a neighbor already had a drum set, so the band needed a bass player, so I became a bass player. And that's about the long and short of it.
It's pretty much the universal story, right?
Yeah, you do. So many of us started playing to keep up with our friends or to get girls. So
Yeah,
that was
both.
It was some of both.
And
I was
all the
12,
cool
so I
instruments are
wasn't
taken.
Yeah, right. I was 12. At 12, the girl thing was probably less important than keeping up with my guys, but that soon changed for sure.
Sure, yeah. So then, did you get like formal training in school or private lessons or anything like that?
I took private lessons for just a couple of months. And, learned how to tune the bass, learned a couple of Neil Diamond songs. I mean, Neil Young, not Neil Diamond, Neil Young songs. Not a big Neil Diamond fan.
There's
But anyway, Neil Young
Freudian right there.
songs. Maybe. Well, I'm not 12 anymore, I guess as we get older, we go from Neil Young to Neil Diamond, maybe. I don't know. But anyway.
Hey, we'll take any gig that's going these days, right?
There you go. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll play with Neil Sedaka at this point. I shouldn't beat up on Neil Sedaka anyway. What was the question? We were talking about I got started.
Playing, yeah.
Start 12. Yeah, so yeah, that's right. Neil's Young. We learned Neil Young songs, and then from then on, I've been pretty much been self-taught. I was fortunate that I had a natural aptitude for it, and so I was always playing, with guys who were older than me. So I really picked up a lot from them, and I've always been interested in, my own studying on my own. So books and listening to records and stuff like that. So that's how it started.
Yeah, right. So who were some of the hot acts or bass players going around at that time that would have been a kind of formative influence on you?
Yeah, at that time, probably my biggest early influences was Larry Graham. The Graham Central Station was big. Brothers Johnson, Sly and the Family Stone for sure. James Jamerson, because my mother listened to a lot of R&B, Aretha Franklin, stuff like that. She was actually a gospel singer, but she listened to a lot of the secular artists that also crossed over into gospel. So Aretha Franklin, Etta James, Al Green, Curtis Mayfield. I grew up listening to a lot of that stuff. And then got into the funk thing, and then I heard my cousin Alan turned me on to Return of Forever, and I lost my mind.
Right.
And at that point, made it left into the fusion thing.
Sure. So how roughly how old were you at that point?
16.
Okay, that's a good age for getting excited by complex, fast music.
Right. So then it was Return of Forever, and one of my big influences back then, after that point, was actually Abraham Laboriel. I really enjoyed those early Lee Ritenour albums.
Yeah, right.
Captain Fingers, Captain's Journey.
Captain
and
Fingers is such a great album.
Awesome on that. Yeah, Abe was just awesome on all that stuff. So, and eventually came back around to the R&B thing. I never left it really,
Yeah.
Was really into the Isley Brothers and the Commodores, Earth, Wind and Fire. It was played in those kinds of bands. In addition to the fusion thing.
Some of the 70s Commodore albums are so funky.
Awesome. They really are great.
Yeah.
Really are great.
I was listening to one the other day. It's got like a train on the front cover. It's like a kind of brown.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah, I can't remember what that was called.
So a kind of a fairly steady diet of funk, fusion, R&B.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so you're just playing in kind of local cover bands and that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, playing local cover bands. Never really did back then there was not that was so long ago, but there was a real, in the States anyway. I don't know how it was in Australia, but in the States there was a real market for live bands in like hotels and nightclubs, stuff like that, where you'd be in a band and you would play 6 nights a week in a club or in a hotel, and you would make there was this whole circuit, a lot of bands came out of that, a lot of great musicians came out of that. I never really did that. I was playing in like an R&B band, doing R&B Motown covers, stuff like that. And then when I went away to college, I started playing in a fusion band. And the other nice thing about that time was you could play in a band that was playing all original music, or virtually all original music, and still do those kinds of places, or do a lot of gigs,
Just
Whereas now,
the demand
you
for
have
live
to
music was just what people checked out.
Yeah, yeah, and it wasn't so the playlist, the genres weren't so restricted,
Yeah,
Now, I mean, if you play in a band, you gotta play either on the side where you're playing a lot of the Justin Timberlake, Katy Perry kind of stuff, or you're playing Southern rock or whatever, or that kind of stuff, Skinnerd. But back then, you could actually be in a band and like be writing original music, you know. And so I was doing that, and then I started touring, with jazz. So I never really did like the 6 night a week cover band thing.
sure. But
Sometimes
you
I
were still playing a lot.
Yeah, I'm still playing a lot. Sometimes I wish I had done that because I mean there's a whole lot of vocabulary that comes out of doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Learning
Yeah.
other people's parts and stuff like that. I
That's
eventually,
true.
got it, but at the time that would have been another side of it,
Yeah. And also just, road chops, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, playing 6 nights a week, that'll do it. That'll
Yeah.
do it.
It's a real shame that, I mean, the only places you can really do that these days are on cruise ships or, the Middle
Right.
East or Chinese hotels kind of thing where you go away for 6 months
Right,
and
right. Yeah.
that kind of thing. Maybe Vegas if you're lucky.
Yeah, the gigs. Yeah, I know some people who do that in Vegas or who did it in Vegas. But Vegas is a a little environment in itself. It's kind of a petri dish.
Yeah.
So there's only so many gigs there. But to be able to go out and tour doing that kind of thing, like you said, on a cruise ship or doing the hotel circuit.
Yeah. Did you ever, a side note, but did you ever come across a band called Santa Fe and the Fat City Horns from Vegas?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I was
they're
just-
still out there. Tom Schumann from Spyro uses them a lot on his projects.
Ah, cool.
He uses the horn section on some of his projects.
Yeah, I remember actually the trumpet player on I did some cruise ship contracts, and the trumpet player on one of those concerts, contracts gave me a Santa Fe CD. Well, transferred it from his hard drive to my hard drive.
Right.
And I just remember listening to it and going, that's what a live big show band should sound like. Because we were in the cruise ship show band, which was
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
good, But then you
Right.
heard this live recording, and I was like, wow, that's next level stuff. The bass player, Rashawn, I think his name was.
Yeah. Not Rashawn Ali. What's Rashawn's last name? Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Rashawn Ross, is
Great.
that him? Rashawn Ross, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
awesome.
Cool. And so you've always been writing as well?
Yeah. Even early on in the that like original band I was talking about, we were writing. I was just laughing because I was cleaning up my studio and like trying to sort through boxes and stuff like that, and I found a cassette of that original band
Yes.
from back then. And it's actually, I'm looking at it right now. It's so funny.
And then you got to find a cassette, something to play it on.
Exactly. Actually, I still have one of those here somewhere. But yeah. So I was always kind of writing. That's what that band did, was original material. It was kind of in the vein of it was vocal stuff. It's funny because we would play Weather Report tunes, and then we would do stuff that sounded like at the time like Foreigner, stuff like that. The guitar player is this guy Chuck Underwood, who's a really great guitarist, was the guitarist, and he was into Coltrane before any of us were, really, and Miles and stuff like that. But at the same time, he was into Hendrix, and as a matter of fact, we've recently done a Hendrix Joplin tribute show.
Cool.
So it was a really broad range of stuff, and it's funny because it was a 5-piece band, bass, drums, guitar, and keyboards, and saxophone. We had a saxophonist, and at some point we decided we wanted to go in more of a rock direction, so we decided we didn't need the saxophone, so we parted ways with the saxophone. And that summer, that Foreigner tune with Junior Walker on it came out. What's the name of that tune? I can hear the solo in my head. I can't remember the name of the tune. Anyway, and we all just looked at each other and went, "Oh,
Damn it.
But Urgent.
Urgence, right.
Was that what it was? Urgent?
I don't think Foreigner, well...
Maybe not.
it's
No,
a
no, it
little
wasn't
bit
Urgent.
before
What
my
was
time.
it?
I don't know.
What's that?
A little bit before my time.
Okay. Yeah, I can't remember the name of it. It wasn't Urgent. It was one of the other ones. Anyway.
So what kind of bass were you playing back in the beginning?
The very beginning, the first bass I ever had was like a, I don't know where it was made, Korean or something like it. It was like an SG bass copy. Had 3 pickups on it.
All right.
And yeah, and this is another one of those moments where you look back on, you go, well, if I'd only known then, know what I know now. Because I went to the music store, my dad took me to the music store, and I had the option of buying a Fender Mustang with the little racing stripe on it.
Yeah.
Or this bass that had 3 pickups and all these switches on it. It was like a walnut mahogany.
Yep.
And of course, I went for the Flash. It was a piece. It was
Of
really
course, right?
shitty
Because more is more.
bass. More is more.
Do you want the little bass with the skinny, tiny little pickup, or do you want the bass with horns and 3 chrome pickups?
Oh, it was awesome.
It's not fair. It's not a fair contest. I bet you wish you still had that. I bet you wish you'd got that Mustang though and held on to it.
Right, absolutely. So that's what I started out on. And then when I was in high school, I pretty much took ownership of the school's bass. And again, this is one of those moments. It was a probably 66 or 67 jazz bass. Candy apple red with the matching headstock, with a custom colored headstock. And I'd say it's probably 66 or 67 because if I remember correctly, it had rosewood fingerboard, but it had block inlays instead of dots. So it had the custom color from before, but it was like one of those transition basses.
And this was the school bass.
It was the school's bass, yeah.
I mean, I guess
And,
back in the back in the day, back in that time, there wasn't that many other choices for basses, so it's not crazy that they would have a 67 Fender because it wasn't a vintage instrument at the time, right?
No, it was either a jazz bass or a P bass or maybe some school, if the band director was a Brit rock fan, might have had a Rickenbacker or something like that. But yeah, you're right, there weren't a whole lot of choices. So I played that through high school. And it's funny because a friend of mine later went back to the school and traded them a new P bass for that bass.
Smart. And
then he sold it. This was maybe 20 years ago, and still then that bass was worth $3-4 grand, $5 maybe, something like that. They were already starting to get up there,
I mean, I can imagine if it had been in the school system for 20 years, it would have been maybe not well looked after.
Yeah, maybe not. But apparently he must have gotten some money for it. But anyway, so that's why I played through high school. And then when I played in this band I was talking about, it was originally called the Rhythm Method. And then when we decided to get hip, we called it the Method. And so I had an Aria Pro 2.
Cool.
Which was actually a really cool bass at the time. That brings back memories.
So would this be late 70s?
80s. Early 80s.
Early 80s, okay. Yep.
Yeah, early 80s. So I had an Aria Pro 2. And then after that, it was a lot of custom basses. I had a custom made, used to be a couple of builders in the Baltimore area called Mike Kuntz and John Thurston, Kuntz-Thurston. And so they had built me some custom basses, and then I had a couple of custom jazz basses and stuff like that. And then, of course, later I started building basses for myself. So
yeah. Do you ever do some of the larger brands like Ken Smith or Federa or?
No, I when I started building basses, the first bass I built for myself, I tried building one in high school. That's another story, but it never got finished. When I built my first bass, prior to building my first bass, I decided I was going to switch to 6-string, and I actually went to Federa and played one of their basses. And then I came across this book on how to build guitars, and
which was a lot cheaper than buying a Federa, buying the book.
Yeah. Even then, they were super expensive. Now it's just like, it's buy a bass or buy a car, I actually played, when Anthony Jackson was his first contrabass. I guess his first contrabass was a Ken Thompson. Yep. And then he had a Ken Smith. Ken Thompson? No, not Thompson. Well, it was a Thompson bass. What's Thompson's?
Carl Thompson?
Carl Thompson, thank you. Ken Smith, Carl Thompson, Ken Thompson.
Carl Smith anyway, and Ken Thompson.
Right, exactly. So he had a Carl Thompson and he had a Ken Smith. And so I decided I was going to play 6-string. I wanted to switch to 6-string. And so I drove up to Brooklyn and went to the Federa factory. And they hadn't built Anthony's bass yet, but they were working on it. And Joey said, he said, we're building this bass for Anthony. We'll call you when it's done if you want to come back and check it out. And so I did. And then I came home, like I said, and at that time, there was no Bass Player magazine. It was just Guitar Player magazine. And in the back of Guitar Player magazine, there was a ad for a book, for Melvin Hissock's book, Build Your Own Bass Guitar.
Right.
And it was one of those fortuitous things, I got this bug in my head that I was going to do it. And I'm the kind of person, once that happens, it's, it just...
Game over. Yeah.
Yeah, it takes hold and it never lets go. So then I started thinking about wood and everything. So I went to this wood supplier in Baltimore. They sold some exotic woods, and I walked in the front door, and on the book rack was Melvin's book.
Huh.
And I said, "Oh, you have this book? I just saw a review of this book." And the guy said, "Well, yeah, the publisher sent it to us. We didn't order it. They just sent it to us." I was like, "I'll take it." So that, and just tinkering with my own instruments and taking them apart and seeing how they kind of went together, that got me started building.
So was Anthony kind of a bit of an inspiration as well in terms of
huge.
Making you think, I want to play 6-string? Because in my head, when I think of Anthony Jackson, I really think low B more than I think high C,
Oh, absolutely.
But I guess it's just that playing across the neck instead of up and down.
Right, yeah. I mean, Race with the Devil on a Spanish Highway, the Al Di Meola tune. Are you familiar with that tune?
No, not particularly.
Oh, check out Al Di Meola's album, Elegant Gypsy.
Okay.
That tune, and also Chicoria the Leprechaun, that album. Anthony's on both of those. And like on the Al Di Meola tune, Anthony's playing the pick, obviously. Back then, he switched at one point, and now he plays more with his fingers than with a pick. But back then, I think it was almost exclusively a pick.
Yeah.
And there are these 16th note lines that, just, and Anthony's playing them all note for note with Al Di Meola, and it's just, and I heard that, and it was just like, holy crap. So and they go from very low to very high,
Yeah.
And
and to do that on such a broad neck as well. Because his basses they don't seem particularly ergonomic.
Well, they are for him. I mean, have you ever seen his hands? His hands are huge. I mean, he's not a very big guy.
Yeah.
But his hands are monstrous. I mean, they go across that neck, and it must be like P-bass spacing, but over 6 strings,
Yeah.
My basses are my 5s, and when I was building 6s, when I was playing 6, were jazz bass spacing over 5 or 6 strings, you know.
Yep.
So it was like 19 millimeters at the bridge, and but you know, a little closer at the nut, so it made them a little more manageable.
So here's an interesting question: do you measure the bridge in millimeters, but the nut in inches?
You know,
Because there's this hybrid system, you know, where it's like
right,
1 3/4.
right.
And...
Well, the thing is all the manufacturers, all the bridge manufacturers, all do millimeters. I mean, that's kind of a standard spacing. 19 millimeters is kind of a standard spacing. But the whole bass, when I build a bass, the whole bass, I'm dealing in inches. I don't deal in millimeters. But that one thing, it's like someone says what my spacing is 19 millimeters. You know, if you convert it to inches, I'm not sure what that is, but it's probably some weird fraction.
Yeah. So yeah, let's get into the bass building thing for sure.
Okay.
What do you reckon it was that you were trying to build or achieve that you felt that you couldn't get from a standard instrument or even a custom instrument, or was it just something fun to do?
Probably a little bit of both. You know, part of it was you know, I had, after my Aria Pro 2 phase,
Yeah.
I went back to jazz
What kind of
basses,
style
you know.
was the Aria Pro 2? Was it like
It was like a neck through
an alembic
body
vibe?
with wings, not unlike an alembic, you know.
Yeah. I think
Not
I
quite
know
as
the one.
elaborate.
Yeah.
You know, they're actually really nice basses. Actually, they're probably worth some money now. I haven't seen any for sale like on Reverb or anything for a long time because I think people are holding on to them. It was really a nice bass.
Yeah. My first bass was a Ibanez Musician, so similar kind of
Okay.
vibe.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, the one with the mahogany wings and the through neck stuff.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, so I wanted a bass. I wanted to build a bass because it would be fun, you know. And I'm a hands-on kind of guy. I do that. I work on cars and do that kind of stuff. And so that you know, intrigued me. And then my idea was for it to either have 5 or 6 strings, but be kind of harken back to my jazz bass days, you know.
Okay.
So when I did my original design, the top line of it is actually like a jazz bass. I actually copied a jazz bass because I wanted to really have that feel, you know. And then I designed the rest of it to kind of, you know, look aesthetically pleasing but different.
Okay.
You know,
so the jazz bass was the kind of kernel of the DNA.
Yeah, and that sound, that single coil sound, you know, I still go for that, you know. But it's gonna have other options, which I try to build into the basses. So yeah, so it was you know, part of it was, you know, a fun factor, and part of it was just was looking for something that sounded like me, you know.
And when do you think you finally got it right?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I have yet.
Surely after all these years.
You know, they always end up, you know, once I got to the point where other people were interested in them, I had this thing, well, not just that, but for me too, it became a question of making something that was versatile, that could do different things. So that's what I go for. I think I've gotten there, you know. I think I've gotten there for the most part. So, you know.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a question of just different options, you know. My first bass I ever built was neck through.
Okay.
And then I decided that wasn't really what I was looking for. So then they became bolt-ons.
A big part of the jazz bass thing is that bolt-on connection, right?
They're bolt-on, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then
I'm interested to get your perspective on wood and where, you know, in later years I've really come to think that the neck wood, I mean, that's a big part of the bass where the strings vibrate, and I think I feel like that has a large effect on the tone as much as the body. So
yeah. I think it's you know, it's a it's like a gradient, you know. If you think about it in terms of extremes, if you made the neck out of balsa wood, which is, I don't know if you that's what they call it in Australia, but it's super light, you know,
Yeah.
and super and really not very dense. You know, obviously that's going to sound a certain way. And then once you get up into maple and ash and walnut, the really denser, heavier woods, um, the variance in the different sounds becomes much smaller.
Okay.
You know, so I think that for me the idea is to make the neck as stiff as possible. Um, so I make my necks. They're maple, and then they have graphite carbon fiber stringers, and not just carbon fiber inlaid inside the neck. The neck is actually laminated up with carbon fiber.
Okay.
Actually, the one right here. So you see that the stripes
Yep.
on there are that's actually carbon fiber. It goes all the way through.
To the end of the headstock.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's actually a sandwich instead of being maple and mahogany or walnut or
Yeah.
a lot of people use purple heart or Paduk.
And so
That really makes the necks really, really stiff, you know.
yeah.
So I think that's really important. I think that really transfers the vibrations to the body and allows the body to have more of a bearing on the sound of the bass.
Okay. And so what are some of your preferences in terms of body woods?
You know, the go-to ash and alder are really great.
Yep.
And then you know, either they're either the solid ash or alder, or they have a laminated top on them. You know, that's mostly what I do for aesthetics.
Yep.
That's generally just a quarter of an inch thick.
Okay.
And that'll change the sound of the bass too. I mean, if you use something really light and porous, like maybe a spalted maple or something like that, that's really got a lot of spalt and it's almost like a
Yeah.
fungus.
Yeah.
You know, or if you laminate, say, ebony over top of it or something like that, that'll
Yeah.
that'll stiffen it up. And
You reckon
and make it
it does still affect the tone, the cap wood?
oh yeah, yeah, absolutely,
Interesting.
absolutely. And again, it's a matter of extremes. It's only of a quarter of an inch. My basses, the bodies are only an inch and a half thick, whereas say a jazz bass is an inch and three quarters.
Okay.
So they've got a lower profile. So a quarter of an inch is a sixth of the thickness of the body. So yeah, it'll have some bearing on it.
And
But again,
do you ever do any kind of chambering or?
not yet. What I'm planning to really
Okay.
soon for myself, because I've had shoulder problems, and so I'm trying to get the basses as light as possible without, compromising the sound too much.
Mm.
I mean, there's going to be some compromise if you make a bass lighter, but to try to chamber it in such a way that that would be a less of a effect on the sound.
Yeah. So what do you look for when you're picking out pieces of wood? Do you have somebody that you can go to and say, I'm looking for something like this, and they recommend it, or do you wander around lumber yards, kind of tapping on the boards and stuff?
Yeah, I have a supplier up in New Jersey that I get wood from, especially the ash and the alder, and so I'll drive up there and sort through. It's a 3-hour drive. I'll drive up there and sort through, piles.
Yep.
I'm building mostly for myself. I'm building, I'm taking some orders as they come in, but I don't build in large volume at this point anyway. Like I said, now with this whole thing, I'm trying to shift that way. So if someone wants something specific, then I'll go pick out stuff. And so I'm buying in fairly small quantities, so I have the the luxury of being able to sort through
Sure.
things. And then the cap wood, by and large, to tell you the truth, that is mostly an aesthetic, decision. Because again, it's quarter of an inch. It does have some bearing on it in the extremes, but I think you'd be hard pressed to tell the difference between zebra wood, quilted maple, bird's eye maple, curly redwood's a little less dense. That gets to be a little lighter.
You ever use Purple Heart?
No, now see that would be on the dense extreme.
Yeah.
That would be a heavy dense wood.
I've got a bass that's got it's swamp ash body with a layer of purple heart and then a cap of spalted beech.
Oh wow, nice.
And that's a really tight, compressed sound.
I imagine it would be. Yeah.
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 Whereas my main bass is my F bass, which is ash maple, 70s vibe, and it's got more of that kind of open, roary, dynamic thing going on.
Right. Yeah, I love George's basses. He makes really nice instruments.
Yeah,
He's a great guy. He's a really nice guy too.
And I
nice,
like the fact that they kind of took a while to enter into the super jazz bass realm as well. You know, they've been building their BN and ACFs for a while and stuff, and then they launched their vintage Fender series stuff. And I think, I think it, taking their time to get it right really paid off, because that's where I play. I play the VF thing, and it's just killer.
Oh, that's cool. Cool. Yeah, they're really nice basses.
So who would be some of, speaking of luthiers, who are some of the luthiers that you've kind of taken a leaf out of their book with some of your design aspects, or gone, the way they do that is really cool?
I probably, when I first started building, it was, the guys that really building back then were, the main guys were Ken Smith, Federa, Roger Sadowski, and
Mike Tobias.
Yeah, Tobias. Mike was that when he was in California,
right?
And he was building those basses, and Spectre.
Oh, okay.
Those are probably the five main builders when I first started building, and there were lesser guys like Bullet Citron, Harvey Citron,
Padula,
and stuff.
Zon.
Padula. When I first started building, I don't know if Mike Padula was building basses at that point, or at least not, selling them in big numbers. But I remember getting like literature. Oh, Harvey Fleischman, who doesn't build very many basses, or didn't.
Okay.
I don't even know what he's doing now. But I remember getting, flyers or catalogs.
Yeah.
From like Harvey Fleischman and the early Spectre catalogs, and seeing those basses. And back then they were very small, doing small numbers. So these were really handmade instruments. And Fleischman had these really neat designs where they had like a tuning. The peghead was like an open, like classical guitar, or like a classical guitar with a scroll kind of a thing, And the bodies were really, carved and stuff. They were really cool.
Nice.
Really cool. So that's the kind of stuff that was, an early influence, And Tobias definitely was the layering of the different woods. And at that time, Mike was really, really into the effect that different woods would have on the sound of the instrument. He had like formulas. I guess maybe he still does. I haven't kept up with his catalog and stuff. But back then it was really like, okay, if this is the sounds you're going for, then we'll do a winged neck with maple stringers and walnut back and a maple top, or you could get a different top, and he would have the sandwich like with your Purple Heart, there'd be a sandwich in there to stiffen up the body, that kind of thing. I mean, he was really into that kind of in a science. This is before he sold the company to Gibson and they ruined it. And then he started making the MTD basses, and of course that's a whole nother chapter.
Yeah. And so then, that's the organic side of the instrument. What about the electrical side of the instrument? Did you ever get into wiring your own preamps and coiling pickups?
Not the preamps. I wound some pickups in my time.
Enough to know that you don't want to do it anymore.
Exactly. Enough to know that it's, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun. It was fun. And actually, one of the best basses I ever had was one of my very early basses, and I wound the pickups. And I've been thinking about either doing that, trying it again, or, I have a couple of spools of pickup wire here. And at that time, I'd made my own little winder out of a sewing machine motor and everything. And or getting someone to wind a set like those. And basically, what they were was they were a large magnet, but kind of underwound. So you had more power from it, like a similar to like a quarter pounder kind of a thing. The big quarter-inch magnets, but wound to. I had a set of pre-CVS jazz bass pickups that I found along the way. I don't know whatever happened to them. I had those in a bass, and I loved that bass, man. The bass sounded great. And so it was kind of wound to that resistance, the low 6,000, 6K, stuff like that. And it just sounded really good. It was very transparent sounding, but it still had some punch to it. Mm-hmm. So now everything has big magnets and is overwound, or they're, just standard kind of like the dual 1/8" magnets and wound to pre-CBS.
So what are some of the pickups that you kind of gravitated towards in recent times?
I Bartolini for the longest time.
Right. Yeah. I'm actually waiting on my first set of Bartolinis coming.
Oh, cool. Good luck.
I found a pair on Reverb, secondhand from Russia. And
I'll say again?
From Russia. I found a set secondhand from Russia on Reverb.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
But still in the post, apparently, somewhere.
Yeah. I loved the Bartolini pickups. And Bill was a really great guy. He still is, obviously, but he's no longer, active in the company. I don't know if he actually sold the company or not. I think he did.
Right.
And but he was really great because he was, you could call him up and Bill would answer the phone, or he would get on the phone with you and say, "This is what I'm looking for." And he's like a mad scientist. I mean, he actually worked at, I think he was actually a scientist at Lawrence Livermore Labs in California, which is like the big, jet propulsion laboratory.
Right.
And your screen froze for a minute there. So he would, I would say, this is what I'm looking for, Bill, and he would just go off into this like kind of like how you would imagine Albert Einstein was
holding the phone off your ear for like 5 minutes, going
Exactly. He says, "Oh, well, maybe if we do this, and then we could do that, and no, but that probably wouldn't work, and we could do this." And I can't do his voice, but he really has this kind of like how you imagine Albert Einstein would speak.
Yeah.
And so he was really great. So yeah, I used Bartolini for the longest time, and then I started, branching out, trying to try some other stuff. And
but it's probably just become so much of what you expect to hear from your sound. Is that Bartolini sound, right?
Yeah, but it's funny, and I've been told this by other people. Eventually it always ends up sounding like me anyway. I end up adjusting the bass or the EQ or something, and so then at one point I was looking for more of a true traditional jazz bass sound. A little more modern sounding, but trying to get him back to that sound.
Mm-hmm.
And so lately I've been using Aguilar for the last couple of years.
Okay. Hum canceling or?
Yeah, hum canceling jazz bass pickups and the Music Man pickup. They have a new ceramic magnet single coil. It's not true simple. It's a single coil aperture, but it's hum canceling.
Right.
That I tried at the NAMM show this year. That for as much as I could try it in the convention center, it sounded really good. Yeah. So I think I'm gonna try a set of those maybe.
Yeah, actually, the last episode I just published was with Dave Bunshoft. So.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
It's interesting.
Yeah, they're great guys too. They're really cool guys. So Aguilar in between, Arrow. I've tried Arrow pickups. I don't know if you're familiar with those. Those were in Federos for a while. They maybe he's still using them in certain bases. I think they use a lot of Seymour Duncan stuff, custom made Seymour Duncan I think Seymour Duncan stuff. So yeah, so I've tried different stuff over the years. I tried EMG, just could never get with the EMG thing.
I think
You know, it
EMG
just
just straight up jazz bass pickups, just 4 string.
I've tried a bunch of different stuff. Yeah, I just not too long ago, last year I guess it was, they sent me a set. Um, I talked to Bobby Vega, and I was like, Bobby, because I'd heard, Bobby, I've known Bobby for a while, and I had heard him play some stuff, and I was like, what is that you're using? I said, and so they sent me what was supposed to be like an EMG jazz bass pickup, like a jazz bass pickup, and it still sounds like an EMG.
Yeah.
It's still, which is not a bad thing, really. It's just
Yeah.
not what I'm hearing,
Sure.
It sounds great when Bobby plays it, but it just sounds.
I reckon Bobby
It
could
just
play a
has that
cardboard
kind of.
box and
It
would
just
sound
has
great.
more than you need. What did you say?
Right. Hey, Bobby could probably play a cardboard box and it would sound great.
This is true. Bobby's a bad man. He's so great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the Aguilar is where I am now.
And preamp.
I've been using John East.
Oh,
East
great.
preamps.
Yeah. I've had a few
Really
Johnny's
great.
preamps. I had one in my. I had a Darryl Jones, Lakeland Darryl Jones.
Oh yeah.
Faststring. And John East does a direct replacement for that, so I
Yeah.
stuck that in there, and that really brought that bass to life.
Yeah, they're really great preamps, because they're kind of, they're not, obviously they're designed to go in a bass, but he comes from a pro audio background,
Yeah.
studio recording, recording console thing. So it's really a preamp, it's not a bass preamp per se, it's a preamp. It's tailored for the bass, but it just really has that kind of transparent, great sound, and so many features. That's what I really like about it.
Yeah. Super versatile.
Yeah, this is probably not unlike the preamp that you have in your bass. It's what I guess he calls the Unipre
Mm-hmm.
4-knob. So I'm gonna bring it into the frame.
Yeah.
So it's volume stacked with a pan.
Okay.
Then it's treble stacked with a bass.
Right.
Then mid-range with a continuously variable mid-range, as opposed to like a 3-position or something like that.
Yep.
And then a tone control that also, if you pull it, is passive.
Cool.
And then you just have volume and pan and a
tone.
passive tone, like a
So
jazz
it's
bass, like an early jazz bass.
tone control that works in active and passive.
Active and passive.
Yeah.
So that's really
something
cool.
that I never really. When I got my F bass, they have the tone control that works active passive.
Right.
And it's a really useful
Absolutely.
knob. Even though you've got bass, mid, treble, I still find myself just doing the classic jazz bass thing of volume, passive tone or tone control.
Yeah.
And then kind of going to the EQ and going, what else do I need to add in?
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like it's it's a broader EQ thing, the curve. I mean, it's really great.
Yeah.
I use it, when you've EQ'd your bass and it sounds great and it has that kind of modern sound, and you just want to get a little more of a, vintage sound. Just roll some of the high, not even the high, just roll the tone back,
Yeah, for more of that kind of finger style thing or whatever.
Yeah, and it's a broader brush.
Yeah.
So
and
that's really cool.
You've obviously got a bit of a studio setup happening here.
Yeah.
What's your and what are your preferred signal chains for recording bass in the studio with Spyro Gyra or at home or whatever? What do you kind of aim for?
Well, as plugins have gotten better, it's really kind of direct in, mostly. A couple years ago, I got this Antelope Audio Orion Studio,
Orion,
2017. Awesome. It really sounds great. So I go directly into that, and then use plugins in Pro Tools.
Right.
Um, Either that or I use I can get a if I'm going for something specific. Where is it? Is it nearby? Um, are you familiar with the Motown DIs, the Atlas,
The Acme.
The Acme Audio? So I have one of
Okay.
those, and then I also have a radial, the big radial DI, the one that has two channels in it. It's a J48 or something like that.
Yeah. Classic.
And both of those, I got both of those after using them in the same studio. It's really funny. There's a studio called the Clubhouse in Rhinebeck, New York.
Oh,
It's actually
before I signed on to here, I was listening to Spyro Gyra, the Rhineback sessions.
right. Yeah, exactly.
Great album.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, the first time we recorded there, uh, uh, the engineer Dave Antonell turned me on to the radial DI, and that was not the Rhinebeck sessions. That was, what was the name of the one we did there previously? I can't remember, but it has so much. Supposedly, it has higher rail voltage than most DIs, and it just huge, especially for funk stuff, man. It just had a depth about it. I was like, I gotta get one of those, so I got one. And then when we were doing this more recent album, Vinyl Tap, which we were going for like this kind of old school vinyl thing, and he had one of those Acme Audio Motown DIs, and I plugged into that, and I was like, well, that's a great sound too, and they're completely different. That Motown DI is very focused, kind of mid forward, really brings out finger stuff, and then the radial is great for just kind of like a broad kind of like hi-fi modern sound.
And is it?
So yeah, so I'll go into a DI, and then into the interface or the recording console, as the case may be.
And have you ever, is it always pretty much just your basses, or do you have some old P's and J's kicking around that you go, this track really needs that vibe, or you manage to pull it all from your own instrument?
No, pretty much all using my own instruments.
Cool.
I can get everything I need out of these things.
Nice.
And the new configuration that I'm doing now is there's two jazz bass, dual coil jazz bass pickups.
Okay.
One here, one here. You can opt to put two in this under this cover, but I only use one because two. I mean, it's a different sound. It's just a thicker sound. I'm not sure I personally really use it that much.
Is that kind of 70s spacing where they are?
Yeah. Kind of 70s spacing. So this one's a little further back. So jazz bass, and then in front of this one, under this same cover, is a Music Man pickup.
Really? Because it doesn't look that big.
They are crammed in there. They barely go in there because I didn't want it to be so huge. So, and I actually make these covers. I cut them myself. So I cut them so that it just fits in there. So this is it's like the two jazz bass pickups, that kind of a Graham Central Station kind of thing.
Yeah, the song about our long flowing locks that we don't have anymore.
Actually, I do a version of that on some of my gigs. It's called it's still called hair, but I say I don't believe it's fair to judge a man by the lack of his hair. So that's the jazz bass sound. Been having some problems. I'm getting some clicks and pops lately on my setup here, and then I go to the Music Man sound, right?
So is
So
that just
with the
a switch?
pan, yeah, what happens is in this position it's the 2 outer pickups,
Yep.
and we can pan between them. Okay, when you go to this position, what you have is you're basically just killing this jazz bass pickup, just shunting that to ground.
Yep.
So now you have the jazz bass pickup and the Music Man pickup,
Cool.
and you can pan between them.
Right.
So that's both pickups. So you get that, still got that thickness, but you got that little bit of scooping and a little bit of high of the Music Man.
Yeah, yeah.
And then roll all the way back and cut off some of the mids, the upper mids.
Maybe
And
some
really
of those
get the
highs
Music
as
Man
well.
fit. So that? What's that?
Maybe some of those high end as well. I always find that Music Man pickups are super bright.
Right. So anyway, so you get that kind of sound. Yeah. So
Nice.
that's what we're going for.
That sounds killer. What fingerboard is on that?
This is ebony.
Right. Okay. So you
Yeah.
want to get a bit more of that kind of compression from the fingerboard? Was that the idea?
Right. So ebony, it's got a burled maple top on it.
Cool.
This one has actually got an extra thick top on it, so it's like almost half
yeah.
the thickness of the body. So this bass has a really kind of focused.
And here's a question I'd like to ask Luthiers. How many headstock designs did you go through before you find something that you like?
Well, I went through a few different. a bunch of iterations of this same shape.
Yep.
It was always very close to this.
Okay.
You know, I took a long time to kind of design it. So weird. I'm using my iPad for this, so the camera is over here, but you're there, so it's weird.
No, it's I can see pretty good.
Yeah.
And I notice the path of your strings is pretty straight and no string retainer, so you've obviously got a break angle in there.
Right. Yeah, that's the idea. Now, see, you notice the fret wrap on there.
Yep.
That's because I've had these shoulder problems for a couple of years, and so this is actually it's a 0 fret neck, but the second fret is actually the 0 fret now. It's 0 fret now. So this is basically sort of like a capo. What I actually did was I actually pulled the first fret out and put in a new second fret. I put in this gold, I forget what they're called. It's a really hard alloy, so it doesn't wear. So now the bass is actually 33-inch scale.
Right, and you just literally just shortened the scale length just.
Yeah, and then I moved the dots because obviously you have to move the fret markers on the side. So the difference between this and this for my shoulder was huge. You know, it's just that extra little bit of movement.
The whole 33-inch scale thing is really interesting because I think for a long time we were under the impression that if you played a 5-string it had to be 35 to get a good beat.
Right.
But that's not. That doesn't seem to really be the case. I don't think.
No, 35. It definitely it sounds different.
Yep.
But for me, not different enough that I couldn't make the sacrifice for my shoulder.
Sure, yeah. Have you ever tried the I've got the Groove Gear Duo strap, the Damien Erskine thing.
I haven't tried that specific one. I've tried 2 other brands versions of that.
The group because I did the cruise ship thing again. I was doing 5-6 nights a week, and I had my old Greco 70s P bass with me because it was just a kind of more of a kind of classic covers thing, and my shoulder was just, I had waken up with tension headaches and stuff, and could barely lift my arm up. Got this strap, and within a couple of weeks, everyone was kind of back to normal. It really, really worked. Cool.
Did you find that that the bass hung differently?
It takes a bit of setting up. You gotta tweak the strap, but I don't really notice any difference. No.
Oh, maybe I'll check that out.
Yeah.
Because what I found is with the two different ones that I've tried, was it because well, I guess they're kind of different approaches to it. They're more of a harness kind of a thing, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
And it made the bass sit this way further.
Yeah.
It brought the headstock closer.
Yeah.
Which was weird.
And, so I'm guessing that was where the straps joined. That point was anchored. You couldn't adjust where the straps joined.
You could adjust it, but it's the one that did have it had the straps came to a single point, and you could adjust that.
Right.
But you couldn't get the bass high enough.
Right.
On both of them. Because one thing that would happen, because they came to a point, the higher you brought the point, exactly.
Try and cut your
head
off.
Came up to your neck. So it would only come up to a certain height, you know, and I wear my bass a little bit high.
The Groove Gear one has, I'll just show you it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got it on this guy. So
right.
Basically, this is strap number 1.
Uh-huh.
I don't have the other strap on there because I'm not doing any gigs just now, so I took that off. And then the other strap attaches from like halfway here, and you can put it anywhere along this plane on the back.
Mm-hmm.
So by having it like here, that stops you from getting that squashed neck thing.
Right. Well, one of the versions that I have has that too. I can't remember. It was made by Neotech, I think.
Right.
But the difference is on that one, both straps go to that cross thing. So
having just the regular strap and then the secondary strap to kind of balance out, because it's just about balancing the weight on the other shoulder.
Right.
That's what you want to get. I
did some experiments with that.
Yeah, so you can actually have more of the weight on your right shoulder than the left if you want, or you can balance it out a bit more. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out, see if it'll work.
Yeah. So I just hearing you just jam there a little bit, I'd love to delve into your slap approach and technique and stuff, because that's one of the things that stands out to me is just how on it you are when you're playing slap. You know, I said to you when I first reached out that Down the Wire, when I heard that Spyro Gyra song, I was like, damn, that is how slap bass should be played and sound.
Thanks.
It's just it's just got
funny,
all the things in there. It's got the tone, it's got the double stops, it's got all the stuff going on, and it's kind of a bit of, to me it sounds like that's part of your signature sound. Is this? It's not your typical, it's not Mark King. It's a bit of Marcus, a bit of Larry, because it's got that greasiness.
Right,
in it,
absolutely.
But it's kind of your own thing. So I don't know how do you still make slap bass cool?
Well, to the degree that I actually do it, I don't know. It's just I have a lot of those influences. Marcus is definitely a big. I should have mentioned that before, but Marcus is a huge influence.
Yeah.
But he was much later in my development. That was in the. No, well, maybe not that much later, but the early. There's a bunch of David Sanborn records that Marcus produced and wrote for and played on. And that was when I first really got into Marcus.
Yeah.
In a real way. And it's funny because actually one of my favorite Spyro Gyra albums, even before I joined the band, Marcus actually played bass on, and was Incognito. And you listen to that, and that was from the early 80s, I guess. And you listen to it, and he obviously was a younger guy there, and just really starting to come into his own. But you listen to it, and it's like, that's Marcus,
Yeah, right, even then.
I don't remember what key was that in. Was that in B flat? You know, it's one of those tunes. It's a Tommy Schumann tune. So
nobody slaps in B flat. What are you talking about?
Right. Exactly.
E or G.
Well, I tell you, that's one of the things I really try to do is not always be so dependent on the open strings on E and A. You know, even though like down the wire is an E, but yeah, Marcus said that, you know, the main groove is. But when it breaks down, it goes da 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 da, and then it comes into the solo. It goes at halftime, and Marcus gets into this. And you can really hit. It's like that's you can hear the early kernels of stuff, you know. You know, he gets into that kind of thing, you know. But yeah, the slap thing, you know, one of the things I really try to do, and you know, it's, you know, with varying success depending on the day, is to, especially with the soloing, like I love drummers who when they take a solo, they're really improvising. There are a lot of drummers who take a solo, and it's kind of
lots of drum fills stuck together.
Yeah, or it's stuff that they've worked out, and they just try to string them together with little pieces of improv in between. But you know, so I always like they're going to go to boogada 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 boogada. You know, there's that thing, or some kind of a paradiddle thing they're going to go to. You know, and you know, and depending in regards to the song, the drum solo. You know, it's like you pick a different tune and say, okay, we'll go take a drum solo. And it's like the same drum solo, you know? But I love guys who
and those guys get paid the same as everybody else.
That's right. So why work harder?
Exactly.
So I like that. So when I'm soloing, I try to do that. You know, I try to truly improvise.
To try and be in the moment.
Instead of just, you know, try to get to the point where I can go, you know, or whatever. Yeah. So, you know. You know, so that's my goal, you know.
Yeah.
Which is much better than when I was trying to play the Brothers Johnson. Because those things, you know, it's like that, and it's like hair too, you know. That is like that is a bass part. That's a bass part, you know. So when you try to play it, if you don't know it, it's like, you know, how's it go? Yeah.
And plus it's you know, like Larry, there's a bunch of guys that I find I'm really influenced by, but I find really hard to emulate. Like I love Larry, but I just can't sound like him. Bernard Edwards.
Oh yeah, of course.
I can play his bass lines, but it doesn't sound anything like Bernard Edwards.
Yeah. I mean, those guys are true.
Louis Johnson and stuff, because it's just not the way that their hands move is different from the way that our hands move.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
exactly.
The way that they combine notes together isn't naturally how we would choose to do it. So that's kind of all part of it. And you know, even in the realm of pure improvisation, we're still bound by muscle memory. You know, you can't really play anything that you've never done before.
Yeah,
to some
extent. It's hard.
Extent. But I guess, you know, going to that kind of true improvisation thing. One of the things I think about slap bass is that it frees you up to think more rhythmically than perhaps in terms of pitch, which in a pure improvisation setting is easier, you know, to some extent, than having to think about connecting lines and stuff with the slap.
But see, but see, the thing is, I do think about that, you know.
Yeah.
Because that's I mean, that's what I'm hearing. That's what I want to get across. Um, obviously I'm not going to name any names, but you see guys who have tons of slap technique, but it's all basically
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It's basically that.
There's no.
That's
there's
why
no
a lot of
information,
times
there's no content in there.
Yeah, that's why a lot of times when we're working on our live show, um, and basically kind of quote unquote composing the bass solo, or at least because what I like to do is I like to obviously have some kind of form to it,
Okay.
so that it gets across to the audience, and also to give me some structure to improvise to.
So you got hit points along the way that you kind of want to.
Yeah, that or harmonic, harmonic movement, and then, inevitably there will be a point where I we'll ask the band to drop out, and then I can just truly just improvise there, whatever I want to do. But like the deep end has a set of changes where it's A9 to C9.
Is that's the last track on Down the Wire?
On what?
Is that the last track on that Down the Wire album?
No,
No.
that's on.
What's the main groove in that one? Sorry again, in the deep end.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm playing the live version, which has more of a hip hop groove to it, but it's boom, boom. So that's basically the groove. So anyway, the middle solo is A9 to C9. Oh, sorry. To F major 7. To D9. To B half diminished. F altered. F7. There's actually no bass solo on that section on the original version, but live I solo over that, with like a finger thing, and then eventually a lot of times when it comes to the slap part of the solo, which inevitably it will, because it has to.
That's what I paid the money for.
Yeah, I actually like to slap over those changes,
Cool, yeah.
So. It goes on to the next section, but yeah. So I like to play.
So by doing that, it kind of takes you out of your cliched licks and approaches and stuff.
Yeah,
like
and
that.
it gives the audience something more to hang their ear on. I mean, one of the biggest compliments I ever got was we were doing a festival and we played, and then we were a bunch of bands on the festival, and we came into where everybody was hanging out, and Gerald Albright, the sax player, who's actually a great bass player.
Yeah.
Said, and he says, nice to hear somebody just not jam over E for a whole solo,
Yeah.
So yeah. So I like to try to do that,
Is there any maybe any approaches or stuff that you could recommend to people if they want to try and start to slap over, jazz, essentially jazz harmony changes? Like, right. I noticed that your slap technique, it's not just thump and pop. We've got some double stops. We've got double thumbing.
Right.
Is there any strumming going on there?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes.
So, would you sit down and kind of like play through arpeggios and scales using different slap techniques, or how could somebody kind of try and get into that kind of approach?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, anything that you play with your fingers, try to do it with the slap thing. Arpeggios, yeah. A7. Well, I'm improvising now. I'm not really doing strict rudiments, but try to break up the different rhythmic things. Triplets.
Yeah. And you're thumbing even on the D and the G string, which a lot of people really struggle with at the start. Thumbing on the thinner strings.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. I played sports when I was a kid, and one of the things I gathered from that, primarily American football, was your practice was about preparation. You couldn't go out and practice exactly how a play was going to happen. But you did things to make you prepared to react to things that happen. So, you don't practice a solo per se, or, like I said, there's a certain amount of, lick practicing that you practice, but the main thing is to practice in a way that you can improvise, that you have those skills. So, part of that is learning to slap on those strings. It really shouldn't be any different than the other strings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the double stroke thing, that was something that came to me fairly late, I started getting that, and that was one of those things where, really, literally, I sat in front of the, it's not that I don't recommend this, but sat in front of TV just going.
Yeah. And was that
just because it's really
Victor
a hard thing
or
to.
Larry or what? Who kind of hipped you to that?
I think that was probably Victor.
Yeah.
That was probably the.
Or Bill the Buddha Dickens. Do you remember him?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah, not so much Bill, but yeah, probably Victor more than anybody.
Yeah.
Bill and also Marcus, because Marcus does that thing where he goes, he goes.
Yeah. It's like a triplet thing.
Yeah, I do triplets like one of a bunch of different ways. That's a triplet. That's a triplet. Thumb double pluck. Thumb index middle.
Yep. Oh, okay. Yep.
That's the hardest one to do fast.
Yeah, there's the
I can do that
the
one
two
fast.
thumb strokes. The flea one, I call that. The dig that.
What's that?
The flea.
Oh right, yeah. The double thumb. It's just.
Yeah.
It's a hard one to do.
But I guess originally it's the Lewis Johnson approach, where it's just everything is in and out. Takes a bit more, but they all have their own sound as well.
Absolutely.
The two thumb movement
Absolutely.
has a much more articulate thing. The double thumb, where you're going down and then up, it's a little bit more, smooth to some extent.
Yeah. And Lewis does that thing where he just plays so hard,
Beats on those things.
Well, the way I have my bass set up, it doesn't lend itself to playing that hard, because it bottoms out. But he would,
And do you have thick or thin gauge strings?
I'm sorry, Ed?
Thick or thin gauge strings?
These are actually, I just started using these. These are Ernie Balls, and they just sent me a bunch of stuff to try. And these are the super slinky or extra slinky, I can't remember. But they're I really like gauge 40, 60, 40, 60, 75, 95, I think. Believe it or not.
And then B strings one.
And then B strings are 125.
120.
You know.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
B string doesn't, a 120 or 125 doesn't really make that much difference to me. Because it's so fat, it just at that point. But yeah, I was surprised. For one thing, they're nickel wound, which I've, always been a stainless steel guy. But over time, I've just, I come to the point where I just don't want to work that hard. It's stainless are so stiff, it's such a stiff string. I like the brightness of them.
Yeah.
But it just, my hands just, I've been playing for a long time, and like I said, shoulder problems and hand problems, stuff like that. Just needed something with less tension.
Yep.
So I asked them to send me a set of lighter strings because I was looking for something lighter that didn't sound thin.
Mm-hmm.
And these are really good, man. I mean, the G string still has some meat to it. It just,
cool.
I'm really surprised, so it's really great.
Yeah,
and
I
the
find,
tension, and they're not, and even though they're 40, 60, 75, 95, they don't feel like you're going to pull them off the neck. It's like a really nice compromise.
And that's even with the, I guess I was going to say the 33-inch scale, but your bass is still 30, the length of the string is still 30, no, it would be 33-inch, right?
Yeah, it's 33 from nut to bridge.
Right, and it still retains the tension.
Yeah, I mean, I was really pleased with them. And I'm getting used to not hearing the stainless steel brightness.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those things. And when I first tried them, I was like, these aren't bright enough. But now it's like, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
May have to change them more often.
So maybe let's talk a little bit about Spyro Gyra, how that came along, what that journey's been like.
Oh, it's been great. That came along. Someone recommended me for the gig, and I auditioned, and actually auditioned twice. The first time I auditioned, I didn't get the gig. They hired. I don't remember exactly the chronology of it, but it came down to 3 people, and they hired someone else. I think they hired Jeff Andrews, to tell you the truth. I think that was when Jeff got the gig. Jeff had the gig for
not a bad guy to lose out to. Let's be honest.
No. Jeff had the gig for that long. Didn't really work out, and then they decide when they replaced Jeff. I think that's when Oscar Cortaya got the gig. No.
All right.
Maybe that was Kim Stone. I can't remember. But anyway. So then later, years later, when Oscar left, they were looking for another bass player, and they called me up and they said, we were considering you the last time. Would you care to audition again? And I auditioned again and got the gig. So maybe it was Oscar, because I think that was when it was Oscar, Richie Morales, and Mark Quinones was a percussionist, and it was a really kind of a Latin thing. It was like a Latin section. And that was all those records that had all the Latin stuff. Not Paratino Latina, that was when I was in the band. But anyway, those tunes, Old San Juan and songs like that.
Okay.
So then Oscar did the gig, and then, years later I auditioned and got the gig.
And when was that?
That was 92.
92, so nearly 30 years.
Yeah, nearly 30 years. If you had told me then it would be this long, I would have been like, no way. Nobody has a gig for 30 years.
That's awesome. And over time you've managed to contribute more to the writing process and that kind of thing, I imagine. Yeah.
I was, welcome to do that. I was welcomed to do that from the very beginning. Yeah. The first album I played on, 3 Wishes, was already completely written and partially recorded when I joined the band. Then Oscar left, and so I came in and replaced parts, and then finished recording it. So I didn't write for that one, but ever since then, I've been able to contribute, to submit tunes, and.
Do you reckon that's been part of the reason why it's been such a good relationship, why you've stuck around for so long?
Yeah, I mean that's part of it. Yeah, I mean I've always felt like part of the band. I mean it's it's a really a brotherhood, and it's just gotten stronger over the years as we've all grown. Um, you know, it's I've been able to travel places I never would have gone otherwise,
Yeah.
and play for the numbers of people I might not have ever gotten to play for, especially in the 90s and early 90s.
Mm.
We were playing a lot more. We were doing more gigs. The touring thing is because for everybody has cooled off over the years. It's not
Sure,
what it
yeah.
used to be.
I guess festival dates is kind of where it's at for guys like you.
Yeah, well, and we do some clubs. We do like the Blue Note clubs.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a great club. Well, we did the Birds Underground.
Bird's Basement. Yeah.
Bird's Basement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bird's Basement in Melbourne. So yeah,
Cool.
so we do a mix of stuff now. A lot of performing arts centers. About 1,200 seats, 1,200 to 3,000 seats.
Yeah, I think
kind of thing.
that's where you were booked to play coming out here. I think you were booked to play the Hamer Hall, which is a kind of auditorium.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to hear the bass with a bit of reverb on it.
Yeah. 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 So it's been a good experience. I mean, it's really been great.
Yeah, and so in that time, have you still found time to do your own project and work with other people? I mean, what's the scope outside of Spyro Gyra like for you?
Yeah, I do a lot of stuff in the local area. I've also done traveling with different people. I used to do some gigs with Chuck Loeb
Oh, cool.
and Jeff Kasho. I've done like kind of like sub gigs. People call me.
Sure.
They need somebody to fill in. My first gig I did with Chuck, he called me 3 days before the gig,
Right.
and we were playing in Boston at Faneuil Hall. And there was like 11 tunes, and I did it all with no charts, and that took for 3 days, But
Yeah.
at the time, I really wanted to make a good impression, This was years ago, and he was funny because he was like, "Man, you know the tunes better than anybody else." But
But that's
So-
that's what you want to do as a sub, right? Going and
exactly,
Yeah.
you want to come. That's exactly right. As a sub, you want to come in and have, you basically want to have no one in the audience know that you're subbing,
true.
and only have the people in the band know because it's different, not because it's wrong or bad.
Yeah.
Because everyone
Well,
plays
you-
differently. So
Yeah, it's,
so
it's
you
like,
come
this
in
is-
and people go,
this is
"Yeah,
this is how the song should go."
Right.
Because you're probably playing the recorded version. The guy's like, "Oh yeah, that's how it goes."
Sometimes,
things
sometimes it's like that because it
Things
evolves
morph
over time,
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely morph over time when you're playing them live. Yeah, but that's a good point. That's what you really want as a sub. You don't want to you want to make it as simple for the people that you're playing behind or playing with as possible.
Mm.
I
I think
So I try to do that.
I think I saw Chuck Loeb play. Did he play in a band called Metro? Was that him?
Yeah, that was his band. Yeah.
So I went to New
Chuck.
York maybe 12 years ago, whatever. And
Uh-huh.
I went and saw Metro play, and I think it was Gerald Veasley on bass,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
and Will Lee, because it was at the Blue Note. Will Lee was there. He jumped in.
Uh-huh.
Jumped up beside
Yeah.
in, and it was Dave Weckl on drums and Randy
Oh,
Brecker.
cool.
Just
Cool.
kind of young music student, just sitting front row, just going like,
Right.
this is a Wednesday night in New York. Now I get it, And then you go next night down the road to the 55 bar, and I saw
Right,
Final
exactly.
Chord with
Mike's-
Richard Bona and Mike Stern, and I was just,
Oh, cool. Yeah.
jazz funk heaven.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Chuck's Metro. I think was originally Chuck, Victor Bailey.
Mm.
Was that Wolfgang Hafner? I forget who was in the original Metro. But yeah, it's always a great band. I mean, Chuck was such a great musician.
Yeah, Victor Bailey's such a big loss. He was a massive influence.
Absolutely.
For me,
Absolutely.
in terms of the slap approach, actually, I don't know, like.
Oh, really, Victor?
Yeah, he's got this one song called I think it's called Graham Cracker, his kind of Larry Graham tribute, and he uses these kind of like sliding sixths, like a C and an A and a D and and a B, and I thought, oh, that's a
Right.
shape that you don't normally gravitate towards, especially doing
Right.
slap. So, and I see, do you use those kind of intervals a little bit as well, I think?
Yeah, yeah. Not the six so much, but that's a great sound.
Yeah.
I use tense a lot.
Right.
You know, I do 2/5 kind of stuff a lot. You know, basic chord stuff, you know.
Slightly reminiscent of Kai Eckhart, the kind of chordal slap.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Kai's great too. You know
Yeah.
those guys, man. There's so many great players out there.
Speaking about Lionel Cordio, he's the current drummer in Spyro Gyra, is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe speak a little bit about what it's like to play with Lionel compared to some other drummers, or just general pocket playing with somebody of that caliber.
Yeah, I mean, we've been fortunate to have amazing drummers. You know,
Yeah.
when I joined the band, Joel Rosenblatt was the drummer.
Nice.
It was great. And then when Joel left, we had a guy named Ludwig Alfonso, who was only with us for about a year. But Ludwig's a great player. He plays with Richard Bona. He plays with it's a keyboard player, pianist, jazz pianist, young guy, goes by one name.
American or
Not originally, I don't think.
not sure.
Oh, it's that's going to drive me crazy. But anyway, so Ludwig was great, and then when Ludwig left, we had Bonnie Bonaparte, who's a force of nature.
Right.
Just a great drummer, sings and plays at the same time. Sings like Al Jarreau while playing like Dave Weckl or
Right.
Dennis Chambers. I mean, really amazing. And then when Bonnie decided he didn't want to do the road thing anymore, Lionel came on, and Lionel's great. Each one of them has their own different thing, you know. Lionel's a great pocket player, but at the same time, he's a great soloist. Great has a great sense of the song, which is really important in a drummer, and it's sometimes overlooked and not cultivated enough. And before I joined Spyro, not long before, but just a couple of years before, I did an album. Omar Hakim did his solo record, and I played on his solo album.
Oh, cool.
And I played all the bass, but one tune. Victor Bailey played one tune, and then there were one or two tunes that had synth bass on them. But when we were rehearsing that band to play live, the drummer that was playing, because Omar was only live, he was only planning to play drums on maybe half the tunes, and then he was playing guitar and playing percussion and up front sing, because there's a lot of vocal stuff on it. And so when he was coaching the drummer that was playing, this one I remember really stuck with me. He was like, he said, you got to turn the page. You got to turn the page. So, when you're going from a verse into a chorus or half verse into the second half of a verse, something, there should be something to outline it. And a lot of people don't get that. A lot of drummers don't get that. A lot of bass players don't get it.
Yeah, right.
It's about song. It's about its song form. Even in fusion and in jazz stuff, that's really important. I've never done this, but I'd imagine, hopefully, most of the time, if you took one of our tunes or even a live performance and took everything out and just put the bass in there, you'd be able to tell where you were in the song just from the bass line. And I think it should be the same with the drums, it's just so, I think it's so important,
Yeah.
It just
and
really
and if
elevates the
both
song.
bass and drums are doing that, then it just,
Exactly. So anyway.
Cool. Do you ever get a chance to play with Dennis or Dave Weckl, any of those kind of guys?
Yeah, I played with Dennis a little bit back in the day. Never with Dave.
Okay.
You know, when he and Joel were college roommates,
Right.
which is not surprising because they come from cut from similar cloth. They're different, but they
Mm-hmm.
you can tell they spent time shedding together. And Dave used to come out to see us play, and we were always, man, we got to play together sometime. And unfortunately, it never happened.
Well, still time.
Yeah, I'm not dead yet.
And you mentioned earlier on that you like to tinker with cars a bit as well. So what's your current garage project?
Oh God. Well, I have this project that I've had for a long time, and it's been languishing in the garage. And it's an '83 911 Porsche.
Okay.
The car's in one garage, the engine's in another garage, and it needs, I was planning to do not necessarily a restoration, but more of a resto mod kind of a thing, kind of a hot rod thing. And I just haven't had time, the inclination, and the money all at the same time, It's especially now, it's gotten to be an expensive proposition, those cars,
Sure, yeah.
They've really skyrocketed in value in the parts and everything. So I'll get to it one of these days. But just in general, like I do most of my own mechanical work.
Right.
Over the years, I've gotten more selective about what I want to tackle, what's worth my time.
What's worth your fingers getting skinned?
There's that too. So I'll do brakes and do I replaced the timing belt, on my Volvo once, and the water pump and stuff like that, which was, a bit of a job because it's like a dual overhead cam thing. So I can do all that stuff, and then of course there's the basses and woodworking and.
What's your current daily driver then?
I got an Audi S4 Avant, a wagon.
Nice. That's a bass
I love
car.
wagons. Yeah, right. I love it. That's great. I just got it. I bought it used late last year, and I had a Volvo V50, which is another little sporty wagon before that. So that's it's definitely a bass player car. It's cool.
Well, it's good that you're handy with mechanics now that you own a sporty Audi. I'm just gonna put it out there.
Fingers crossed. So hopefully I won't need it anytime soon.
Yeah. And finally, I watched the John Liebman interview with you the other day.
Oh, okay.
Brushing up. In that, you happened to mention the old Scott Ambush solo album.
Yeah. The always pending Scott Ambush solo album.
How's that coming along now? You've had all this, downtime at home to really dial in.
Well,
those parts
actually, that's part of what I've been using this downtime for. Was like this whole setup here is actually in the configuration it's in now is actually relatively recent.
Okay.
I was like, I got this time. I'm gonna revamp some stuff. So doing some writing and practicing and trying to make it happen.
Yeah, sticking it out until the phone starts ringing again, I guess.
Yeah, God, hopefully it will. It will. I mean, this thing, we'll get a handle on it sooner or later.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully once things pick up again, maybe people will be dying to get out there and see stuff, and things will just. But my concern is, I read there's a whole bunch of really popular venues in Melbourne getting sold and closing down. So even though people might want to go out, I don't know if the venues are going to be open.
Yeah, well, there's that, and I'm afraid that some venues may not come back. I mean, if you're running a club or a venue, and like many clubs and venues, you're on a kind of a week to week, month to month kind of paying bills, taking money, paying bills. To be closed for a year, 6 months, a year, something. It may be a year before we're back to doing, things where 500 people can be in a place at one time.
Yeah. And
even 200.
A lot of these clubs need to run at near capacity to survive, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I heard of some. Do they have AMC movie theaters there?
AMC?
Uh-huh. It's a
No.
huge movie theater chain. I'd heard that they were filing for bankruptcy, and I'd heard another big restaurant chain was filing for bankruptcy. So, yeah, I don't know. Even, some of these smaller restaurants where, you might get a little jazz gig, on the weekends or on a weeknight or something like that. I think a lot of them, are really going to be hurting,
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Well, yeah. Hopefully, maybe this time next year you can get back down under and we can, do this again
That would
in
be
real
nice.
life and do a bit of playing.
I
whatever.
really enjoyed my time in Melbourne. That's such a nice city, man.
Yeah.
We went to the market.
Yep. The Vic
From
Market.
the hotel,
Yeah.
and at that point I was running a lot, and I went running, and it's just a really nice city.
Yeah. I mean, I'm originally from Scotland. I'm from just outside Glasgow, so I've been here for just over 6 years now. And in terms of a music scene and a place to live, it's pretty good. Yeah.
How long have you been there?
Just over 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
And what took you to Melbourne?
A girl.
There you go. That's as good a reason as any.
Yeah, but not just that, but just
Better than most, probably.
the standard of life and the music scene. Melbourne's a city of 5 million people, and the whole of Scotland is 4 million. So you get the entire population of the country I was from condensed into a city. So there's just
Right.
more of everything, and started up my own band and the teaching thing and stuff. So yeah, it was a place that I could kind of fulfill some goals.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
But
Glad it's working out.
maybe we should wrap it up there, Scott.
Sure, man.
It's
Thanks
probably
a lot.
past your bedtime.
No, not quite. No, I'm telling you, man. I've been trying to get my schedule. It's weird not having. I mean, my schedule was already pretty. As a musician,
Sure.
as you know, being a musician is pretty flexible and pretty fluid anyway. But this whole thing has just turned it upside down. Plus, when we came back to this, I come right back from 2 overseas trips, so my head was, completely upside down.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to not stay up till 3:00 in the morning all the time. It's hard, man.
Yeah.
Like if I get to bed by 12:30, that's early for me. That's like, okay, I accomplished it,
Okay. Well, you still getting up at a reasonable hour?
Yeah, that's the thing. I still get up at a reasonable hour, so it's like you do that a bunch of nights in a row, and it's like, because I love getting up in the morning and like getting a whole bunch of things done, practicing, working out, whatever, working a little bit in the shop, and then coming up for air and realizing it's only 11:30 a.m. It's like, oh, awesome. This is awesome. But if you get up at 11,
Yeah, exactly.
then it's like you feel like you just wasted a day. So anyway.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, thanks very much for agreeing to do this. It's been super awesome hanging out with you and finding out all these.
Man, it was really
details.
fun. It was just felt like we were just hanging out, so it's really cool.